All right, we're going to be working on Unit 7 this evening, and we're going to start by exploring some of the information in this unit. Um, the main goal of this unit is really to help you guys identify that there are really rich data sets out there. Um, a lot of them are available for free and they're in the public domain. So I'm going to show you some of those and the exercises that we have in this unit kind of reinforce that. There's also a lot of information in the LinkedIn video series that's linked up here, talking about these topics that you can see. So like how you prepare your data, where you get your data from, including from within your organization or from your own sources, or if you grab it from public repositories. There's also what we call APIs, which are application programming interfaces, which are used to kind of extract data from various sources. We can also do things such as scraping data, which in short is a way of going to a website and running a script to remove information from a website, or remove the information you want while not capturing the information you don't want. So like, for example, if you find a website that's got a list of information and you just want that list, you could write a Python script that would scrape just for that data, right? It takes a little bit of programming skill, but it's a doable thing. You can also create the data from scratch. That's a way to do it, or use synthetic data with Gen AI if you wish. Um, and then you can also grab data passively from devices that are generating it, um, and just create the data from scratch yourself. But I think most people these days would probably use AI to do those last couple of tasks. Um, there's a interesting article here. I'll let you guys just kind of read that one on your own. So make sure that you do read that. And then I'm going to move on here to probably one of the more important repositories of data. This is one of these websites that people who work in this field often go to, either to find examples or to find some data sets that they can use to uh, manipulate data to try their own models and stuff. Um, a lot of people provide the data here for free. So there's really bizarre types of information here. Um, I know that for fun, not really for fun, but as part of a task for some of the classes that we've had, for example, once we pulled down the list of all the Netflix movies, um, because they have a lot more stuff on their site than they usually show you in the search on the interface if you go to their website or their app. And it's kind of interesting to see like all the stuff they're not showing you, right? Because there's movies and content from all over the world, for example. Um, what I would encourage you to do, and I'm not going to dig around here too much because I think I showed you this last week a little bit, is you can search for data sets on all sorts of types of information. Um, so I could think of just one thing I've just popped in my head, right? So for example, I can do a search like this, right? And you can see that I can pull in a bunch of data, and notice they're pulling in data from all over the place. And I'll just let you look at, these are just some of the ones that are coming back. But for example, that you could access all the accidents in the United States between those years, that's got to be a really huge data set, right? But the fact that it's even out there that you could look at it is kind of incredible, actually, right? That it's just out there and it's right there for the grabbing. There's a lot of other things that people do on here, so it's not just the data set. So, for example, if I did want to grab this data set, they'll explain what it is. Some of it is already visualized, so there's examples, of the data here that you can actually like look at live on the screen, like what data is included, and little mini visualizations. And notice that the CSV file, right? This is just text, is 3 GB for this data. That's a huge, huge file. And can you imagine what would happen if you try to open that in Excel or Google Sheets or any program for that matter, really a text editor? That is a humongous file, right? So this is one of the reasons why you do need really powerful equipment, and you need to have plenty of memory and storage on your computer. If your system is operating at capacity, and I'm just going to bring up my task manager here so you guys can see, like, I have a fairly robust system, but if you look at like just the memory here, right, I'm already utilizing 11 gigs out of 16. And if I load a 3 gig file into memory, I mean, that chews up the rest of my RAM, and it can cause performance bottlenecks. Right now, what a lot of people don't realize about how computer memory works is there's also a portion of memory that resides on your hard disk, right, that dynamically writes back and forth between the two, but that process is slower than if it's working directly in RAM, which is one of the reasons why you want to have an ample amount of RAM to do this kind of data processing. The fact that you can grab the file, so if I wanted to download that data set, I just click on it and download it, and I have it. Right? This is public information, right? There's no process to pay for it or anything like that. It is open to the public. Kaggle also has a bunch of other things in here too, and a lot of this kind of overlaps with the materials that we talk about, because we do seek various types of information. And I'm noticing here they have a whole bunch of DeepSeek stuff, but there's a lot of machine learning models that are placed here as well. Large language models, machine learning models that people share publicly. And I think this is really kind of bizarre too, that kind of information is in this repository as well. And it shows you the interrelation between the two technologies of data analysis and artificial intelligence. They are tightly intertwined. People also write code in a bunch of different languages. So you can see Python is way up there. R, another language you guys will learn in the program, is here, and then some of the other tech. And like, so for example, if I want to look at somebody's Python code, you have access to it, right? And maybe at some point in time, you'll also share some stuff here in this repository. I think it's kind of interesting, like some of the data sets or the models and stuff and code things that they have here. For example, they show you the Python code, right? And then they show you the data file. So they show you the Python code that manipulates the data file to output the data that you're looking at. And this looks like global shark attacks data set. And here's the data that they capture in that data set. It's pretty interesting. And then it shows you the number of shark attacks by country. So basically what the Python program does is it takes that data and it creates a chart out of it. And there it is, all for the taking, by the way. So if you're wondering why Python in this program, well, Python is kind of the primary language for doing this stuff. It's really adept at doing rapid application development because of its syntax. It's easy syntax to learn. There's lots of examples to borrow from, and it deals with large data sets very elegantly without a lot of know-how, right? If you have an IDE and you have the right libraries installed and you have the right data sets and you have the code, it's just a matter of sometimes tweaking the code to make it do what you want. All right, so this is just a basic example. So this is Kaggle. It is one of those super useful websites. And I would probably guess that you would probably come back here many times over as you kind of move forward in this program, or when you start working in the field and you're looking for examples of how to work with certain data types. But sometimes just the data sets alone are really useful. And that's really what this is mostly about. They do have a sign up process, and you can just attach one of your Google accounts to it if you wish. But there is no cost otherwise. This is free. It's kind of like an open source community. There's also threaded discussions and things like that. So it's very useful if you're kind of digging into this field for the first time. So Kaggle is a very useful resource and might be at the very top of like great sources of data. Now, as you would guess, it's not the only source of data out there. There's so many that are published all the time. And I was just waiting for that document to open here. And this is a document that we kind of compiled a while ago. And the one thing I'll say is, you know, as with any document like this, things change over time. This one was put together by research that Christopher and I did together. And this is actually, he owns this document, but you'll notice kind of the list here, you know, so the World Bank, the IMF, the US National Center for Education Statistics, and it just kind of goes on and on and on. And some of them take you into some very interesting data sets, you know, that might match up with some of your personal interests or with things that you might be studying. But it is amazing how much information is actually just publicly shared, usually by government entities or research groups or people in education that are gathering the data. Like one real good example was like during the whole COVID crisis, and I think we talked about this already, like how that data was shared. You know, that was put out there on an almost hourly basis, like how many people were infected and died and et cetera by country. And you could tunnel down to county and municipality. It was like that kind of data set. So this is super, super informative. Like if you guys start going through like the kind of data that's available here, and obviously I'm not clicking through on these, but you could literally spend weeks or months kind of just exploring all these data sets. But just knowing that the stuff is out there is useful in itself, you know. So like, you know, for example, if you want to do research on something and you need to get like the raw data set to do your own analysis of it, you don't want to take the word of like a news agency or some government entity or whatever. If you can access the same data that they do and you can run your own analysis on it, you can do your own visualizations on it. And often what you find is people will take data sets and they will adjust the stuff that they create with those data sets to suit the needs of whatever argument they're trying to make, right? And that's kind of a thing, right? And then being able to kind of see through that is kind of a thing as well. Really helpful list. All of these are live links here, by the way, right? So if you want to kind of click through, I think it's pretty fascinating when you get into how much data is out there, right? And we're just really scratching the surface with just clicking through on one link there. But this is a cool list of links, and I would encourage you guys to take the time to go through and start exploring some of those. All right. There is an assignment that we're going to do, but I do want to also point out the fact that there's also a midterm project. And I know it comes after the midterm, but that's just kind of how the semester laid out, partially due to that the 1 week that we had Monday off. I think it was the second week that kind of threw us off track a little bit. But here's what we're going to do. I do want to just kind of point out the fact that I'm going to work on this exercise with you. We're going to start the process of the Unit 7 exercise. We should be able to get a good way through it. But I want to put the midterm project on your radar. There is a entry over here in the left sidebar in the content area where it says midterm and final project. You shouldn't be able to see the final yet. But this is your midterm project here. That one you should be able to see. And that one does have a data set. It's kind of an interesting data set. This is the Electoral College data set from, I think, the last few elections that are kind of gathered. And so basically you have to grab that data, save it in an Excel format, clean the data, and remove duplicates and weird things like that, and then answer the questions in the attached document, right? So it's like taking the data, processing it, looking at it. This does come from a publicly available data set, right? So this is maybe the kind of work that you might do at some point. It's not a very difficult thing, but that's due by the 14th. So you still have 11 days to get that one done. The homework for this unit, the exercise, I think is due a couple days before that. So it's still a week out, but we're going to get started on this tonight. I did want to make one little point about working with the CSV file. And, I should have recorded this in, but the whole time I was building this graph here, I was noticing, or actually in the aftermath, I noticed that it's still in CSV format. So if I just went to save this, I would actually just be saving the data. The visualization is not saving. In order for the visualization to save, I have to do a save as, and I have to make sure that I'm in Excel workbook format. So I got to choose that from the list and then save it. And notice how I've named it too. And that's not even the place I really want to put it, but I'm going to call it Unit 6, Exercise 2. And in parentheses, I'm going to say solved spring of 25. That's for my own reference there. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm putting it in a spot where I want it to be. It's not my downloads folder. I want to put it where I normally keep the work for this class. And actually it's Unit 6, not Unit 7. Right. And that should have been done during the last video, but there it is, right? And now the visualization will stay with it. Otherwise, the CSV file would only retain the data. All right, let's go ahead and follow the instructions then on this exercise. So I'm going to click through the exercise, and there's a document that comes with this, and it's important that you open up that document, make a copy of it, and then build from there. I delayed in releasing this one a little bit because it needed a bunch of tweaking. Mostly what happens in this is you get transported to websites that have public data repositories, and then you go through a series of steps and answer some questions. And I just want to walk you guys through the process of at least a few of them. We won't be able to do all of them here tonight because we only have 20 minutes left, but we should be able to get a good chunk of them going. Right. So I have the document downloaded, so I'm going to pull that up on screen. Let's see where it pops up here. So there's the document. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to enable editing. And for those of you, that are going to submit this as homework, you would be submitting this document with additions to it. That's how it's going to be answered, right? So there's spots in here where you're going to type stuff in. You'll save the document and then submit the document. All right, so I'm just going to start by doing that step first. So I'm going to do a save as, and then I'm going to put it where I normally put my stuff, which is here. And I would encourage you to read up on some of this stuff here, but I'm going to go right to part 1. So there's a number of different websites we're going to look at here, but the point is to kind of get you into the groove of finding these data sets on these public facing data repositories. One of them is this website. It's kind of an interesting one. It's called the Open Government Partnership. And basically what this is doing is it's taking data sets from countries that want to participate. Not all countries participate, by the way. And they're trying to have this initiative that government information belongs to the people of those countries, and they're trying to get it so that the information is available for anybody to look at that wants to look at it if they know where to go, right? if you follow this link here, I'm going to do that. So in the document, when you hover over a link, hold on your control key, and then you can click and go to the website. Right. If you want to read up a little bit about what this organization is and what they do, the information's here. This is a growing organization, and they do some pretty interesting things. But I'm going to click over to the members area, which is where I kind of want to focus you guys, because we're going to look at some of the countries that participate in this. And so they have some that are featured up at the top here. I'm not sure why certain ones are featured on this website, probably because they've had recent updates to their profiles or something, but you can see some of the countries that they're looking at. And then if you kind of break it down here, you can see all the countries that participate. I can tell just from looking at the list, it's not all 174 countries or whatever the count is these days. But most of the world's major known countries are on this list. Most of the European countries, I suppose most of the Americas are in here from what I'm seeing. Anyhow, if you have one in particular that you want to look at, maybe because it's your nationality or whatever, feel free to click on that one and see what information they share. So one of the first tasks here, right, is to go to the members area, which I just did. And then it said list several countries that participate. So that's a really easy one. Just type in, 4 or 5 names in that list. And then it says here, select a country at the bottom of the list, and then create, I see a spelling mistake here, which I'm going to fix. Create a list of some of the information accessible on this page and add a screenshot or two of some of the information you're finding. So I'm just going to kind of click in, and I'm going to kind of pick a country at random here. Try to find one that's kind of interesting. How about that one? I know very little about it. And as you land on each country's page, and notice I have this big graphic at the top, kind of like a splash screen. But then when you scroll down, they have all the access to the information relative to that country. So one of the things that they have here are the action plan, who you can contact that's responsible for the information, what resources they provide, and the data that they've been sharing. And so, for example, if I want to scroll down here, most of that information is right on this page, by the way. But you can see some of the stuff that they're kind of gathering up. And this particular country has 82 entries for information. And you can click through and you can go into very particular pieces of information. So like, for example, they have one here to encourage youth participation in green policies in the country of Montenegro. And then of course, if you can click through to some of the other data sets here, and you can kind of, dig in. So they have like tax records, administrative fees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are like data sets that you're providing through this repository. So one of your other tasks is to identify some of the types of information that are available once you're looking at it. Now, you notice I'm not typing this in. You should be doing this on your own. And what I would recommend is like, what do you find notable? What information catches your eye? Maybe even why it catches your eye. It'll be different for everybody. They have a bunch of information you can scroll through. So some of these are just go ahead and look at the stuff. There is also this particular link here, and I'm going to click through on this one. It says go to this link and list some of the information found in the public commitment database. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I want you to kind of like read through this a little bit. This is a little bit overwhelming when you start to look at the data sets, but when you look at the kind of information that they're providing, and then notice that they actually have, for example, and I looked at a couple of these, a little bit earlier. just to make sure that they were working for class, by the way. But for example, the Open Government Partnership here has a Google Sheet or an Excel or a CSV you can download. So these two would be downloads, and this one is a browser view. So I'm going to just open it in a tab. But this shows basically the level of participation of all the countries that are part of this organization. And you'll notice it's got a ton of detail here. Like if you start scrolling these columns, like how much data is here, right? And I noticed like for some of these, they're like zeros and ones, right? True or false, right? And so like some countries have a bunch of information, some don't. And then if you start looking at how large this data set is, once again, we're dealing with a really large data set because each country will have multiple entries in here depending on, you know, the information and their level of participation in the organization. And I would think like a country like the US, or at least I would hope, would maybe have a lot of entries, and maybe we don't have as many as we think, right? But they get in here and they talk about all the different things that they're doing. Like this is a database that tracks the participation of everybody in this organization, right? And that's one set of data. So it's a database about who's participating and how. Right? And you can see how large that is. And as you scroll down here, right, they talk about, you know, like you can get access to all that data as well. Right. And then it says here, list some of the information you can find. And so you could, that thing that we were just looking at, what information was in there. So you could just probably sort of regurgitate what I mentioned and kind of roll from there. This other one here is I think one of the more useful parts of the website, real frankly. So I'm going to go to this link, and this is the data dashboard. So as I click through on that one, what's kind of neat about this is this brings up the participating countries on a map. And notice as you look at that, which countries are participating and which countries are not. I think it's a pretty fascinating graphic, right? Seems like most of the European countries are participating. Almost all of the Americas are participating, but there's some real big players like China and India and a lot of Middle Eastern countries and a lot of African countries that are not participating. And when you think about the nature of the organization, the organization is open government information. What does that tell you about the nature of the governments in those countries? You know, that's doesn't mean that they're not open, but they're certainly not part of this project. Interestingly, if you scroll down here and you start looking at some of their things that they're working on, right? And with any of the stuff that you see here, you can download the information, right? And then further analyze it. It's another really kind of neat aspect about this. You know, they have their data sets here, and you can download all the data sets. And I think this is really a neat website to kind of explore. If you start clicking in through countries, you can see how many things they've done, right? You can go country by country. And of course, you can like zoom way in. Maybe that's a little too far, right? Something like that. And so, for example, I could click here or here. And I'm clicking on these little circles, and I don't know why some of them have zeros, but they're still listed here. But I think it's kind of interesting just to see what countries participate in a website like this. Okay, so that's the first part here, right? And then you answer the question that goes with that. Another website I'm going to take you to, and this one, in terms of doing research here in the US, whether you're looking at the federal government, state government, your local municipality or county or whatever, I find this one is maybe one of the more powerful ones. I'm going to go ahead and click through. This is data.gov. This is from the US government. And one of the first questions you're asked is how many data sets are available? There's a lot, right? And it tells you right there, like over 300,000 data sets that are out there that you can pull from. Things are organized in categories. So for example, let's see the most used data sets or most popular ones right now, right? So crime data, inventory of owned and leased properties, national death index, fruit and vegetable prices, air quality, etc. These are very interesting data sets. These are provided by our government. Some are localized, some are national, by the way. I'm going to go back to that main screen. There's also the ones that are recently added. So like new stuff is added. You can look at it like right when it comes out. That's kind of cool. You can also look by organization. So if you are looking for data for, I don't know, a certain city, like the city of Chicago or something, or a certain entity that shares their data here, you can search and filter from this page. And then they also have the geospatial, which, is basically looking at how when things are, mapped out, like you can see it, how it's mapped, basically. A lot of stuff here. Some of it is conglomerations of other data sources, by the way. All right, so let's go back to the instructions here. And we're going to go ahead and click on the data tab here at the top of the data menu. And it brings us to this interface. And then we're asked we want to filter by local government and then city government. So let's click on local government. That's one filter that's applied. And then I'm going to scroll down a little ways here. And then I'm going to click on city government. All right. And then what we are asked to look for a very specific set of data here. Right. And what we're looking for is the crime data for the city of Chicago from 2001 to present. And this is a live and interactive data set, by the way. So we can enter here. Spell it right, though. And notice they have it broken down by zip codes and everything. But I'm just going to choose the first Chicago entry here. And not finding the specific crime data. But let's see if we can show more tags. All right, so I didn't find it very conveniently. So I'm going to clear this filter. And I forget how I got there last time. It was a whole lot easier than this. Okay, so there you go. So I typed Chicago in the search box up here. And then here we go. City of Chicago, crimes 2001 to present. I want you to notice here that they do provide a CSV file, an RDF, whatever that is, a JSON. I hope some of you know what that is. That's a data format for files, or an XML file. So those are all very common data formats. And depending on what kind of software you're using, or spreadsheet you're using, or application you're building, or database you're feeding it into, one of these formats will be appropriate for you depending on the software you're using. If you're using Excel, you probably use a CSV file. Now that's if you want to download it. But what I'm going to show you is what a lot of these data sets, right? This is taking us in here and explaining what the data set is and where it's published, right? And so you can just grab the data and then you have it yourself, and then you can visualize it. You can create your own charts and graphs. But you'll also notice here that aside from just being able to download this, there's a landing page. So this actually can take us right to the data repository from the city of Chicago, right? And this is where it starts to get kind of interesting, because we have the ability to look at it on a map or use their data dashboard, um, and or just look at the records straight up. So I'm going to start with the data dashboard, because this is, I think, what I told you to do in the instructions here. And as we kind of allow this to pull up on the screen, I do want you to notice at the top here that they have a bunch of different filters. So we can filter by dates, what type of crime you're looking at, right? If you wish, if there are arrests, which district, et cetera, right? And you'll notice, you know, all the different categories here. And so basically what we're looking at is there's been 1,751,000 thefts in Chicago since the millennium started. Interesting, right? I mean, that's a conglomerated set of data. And as you kind of start looking through here, you can start breaking it down in a lot of different ways. Now, these visuals and data sets are provided by the city of Chicago. We're now on their website, right? But all of this data that generates these visuals is in those files that you can download, right? So they're using that data set too to create these visuals. And you'll notice, for example, like you can see what areas have higher crime rates in the city of Chicago. And it might not be where you think it is. You know, that's kind of the interesting part. Like why do some areas have like no crime? Well, because it's all factories, you know, or it's all warehouses, you know. And why does this blurb here have a ton of them? Well, that's where the airport is. So a lot of people get ripped off at the airport, apparently. You know, it's kind of like weird information like that. With many of these, you know, the maps often are interactive. So like when you hover over the visuals, it tells you, you know, information, right? You know, it's very similar to the visuals in Excel. You can also backtrack into the data, and you can actually look at the data that's generating the table itself, which I think is fascinating as well, right? So with multiple views of the data here. A lot of these maps, I think, auto update. And I'm not sure what tool they used to build this, but to me, it looks like Tableau. It's the tool they used to create this. This is a really big thing that's happening in the data field right now, is a lot of people like ourselves learn how to do these things. Then we get hired by organizations like this that give us data sets, and then you create visuals of the data sets for people to look at. And this is on a live website, and it's filterable and searchable and downloadable and all of those things. Right. So we are pretty much out of time here, but you know, we kind of went through, you know, most of what I was talking about here. And then from there, point out the fact that other major governments have similar websites, right? You just change the top level domain on those, like Canada and Britain and Australia, for example. And then there's a few more parts to this document that you'll have to complete on your own, but we can always talk about these next week. I just want to give you a heads up when you go to some of these sites. I was playing with this one. I'm not really sure how to say this one. I think it's NEMA, basically. This one takes a really long time to load up. And when I tried to access some of their data sets today, it was blocking me. So if you are getting blocked, just let me know that in the document, and then don't complete that section. But some of the types of information that you'll find here, there's this Gapminder website I want you to take a look at too, right? It's all the different tasks, and I know I'm going through it quick, and then I asked you some questions at the end. So we got a good way through this already. but I want you guys to take some time and explore some of these data sets because some of them are very enlightening, you know. So if you ever have questions about, hey, how many, whatever, if you have a question, that's quantifiable, chances are there's a data set out there that you can look at to support your opinions or create an opinion. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up here. This is it for today.